Welcome on Fair and Square. My guest today is Pavit Kaur, author of Stolen Years and daughter of Simranjit Singh Mann. Welcome on Fair and Square, Pavit Kaur.
Thank you.
You've written this book on your father, Mr. Simranjit Singh Mann, president of Shiromani Akali Dal Amritsar, about his years in jail from 84 to 89.
Yes.
The book is titled Stolen Years. What does the title mean?
Well, I've called it Stolen Years because essentially those years were stolen from, we didn't have a father. For 5 years he was in solitary confinement in Bhagalpur, Bihar. So in a sense, those were stolen years. So that's what I chose to call the book.
What made you write this book?
Well, I first started writing it in Sana'a when I was studying there in class 11 and 12. I think it was essentially therapy for me at that time because it had been a very painful period of our lives. And while we were in that time, we tried to stay strong and just carry on with life. So I think once Papa came out and things sort of started settling down to normalcy and we started living a normal life, I started writing what we'd gone through. And then once I'd finished my little bit of it, I put it away, and for years it was forgotten. It helped me, I think, to come to terms with.
Was there something particular you wanted to convey through the book?
About 3 years ago, Random House commissioned me to write it, and that's when I started putting it together. Then I got hold of Papa's prison diaries and his letters and everything. And that's when I decided, yes, I'd like to have it published and just let the world know what we went through, what the effect of 1984 was, because at least I personally feel that it's been pushed under the rug a lot. And maybe a lot of people are even scared of writing about it, and a lot of Sikhs had a much worse time than we did. And I hope by having this published, it encourages other people to just pen down what they felt so that it's recorded just for Sikh history, if nothing else.
At a personal level, did this book offer a kind of a closure to you, to your growing up days, which you call stolen years?
Yes, absolutely. I've felt that it's really helped me come to terms with it, with that time, and I'm happy to have written it.
You talk about your childhood days, which were happy and, while growing up, till 1984 happened. Then your father, he wrote a letter to the president condemning 1984, the Operation Blue Star. And then after that, he also sent his resignation, but then he was dismissed from the service, and then he went underground, and then he was caught on the Nepal border. How did life change for you when all these episodes happened? As a child of 11, you were only 11 at that point in time.
Yes. Well, it changed completely. From being a normal, happy family, we were thrown into this very difficult time. When Papa resigned and we were living in Bombay, he was posted in Bombay as group commandant of the CISF, and then we had to pack up from there and come back to Chandigarh, to the Punjab also, and it was very difficult. A father locked up.
But were you did you understand what was going on?
In the beginning, no, not at all. I think the harsh reality of that time was kept away from us a lot. My mother was very protective about keeping us away from the public light and just telling us the barest minimum of what was going on. And so was the rest of the family. I'm very fortunate to have a family that deals with things very, matter-of-factly. It wasn't that everybody was sitting and crying all day or saying, "Hi, hun ki ho gaya," and all. We kept living and moving.
But once you started understanding the whole dynamics, the whole, situation, how did it impact you in the sense that there are certain incidents which you've mentioned about your school where you were asked your name and your father's name and an introduction and you lied?
Yes.
So how, once you started understanding the whole situation, how did it impact you?
I was a little insecure. It isn't easy to tell someone that yes, my father's in prison or he's a prisoner. Then slowly, as we grew up and during those years only, we realized that it's nothing. This history teacher, if you read the book, he made me realize that it's nothing to be ashamed of, or not to speak about it, and to just be proud for what sacrifice my father had made for his religion and his people, chucked up his job and suffering. So yes, ultimately I was all right and fine, but in the beginning, children can be very cruel when they are growing up, so one was always scared that someone would say something nasty or your papa.
Did you experience that?
Never, not even once. No.
As a daughter, you have written about how your father was tortured, and there are those examples where he was tortured, on his private parts and given electric shocks. How was it when you were writing all this? It's a very
earlier
difficult.
You asked me whether I'd come to terms with it. This is the only bit of the book and my writing that I still haven't come to terms with, is the torture. So I don't even write too much about it in the book because I can't. It's too painful. It was very sad and very difficult, and it's unbelievable and that in today's modern day and age he was just put in without being charged or anything and treated like that.
Because I was expecting that there would be more about the torture, but it's just a reference, and you
yes,
skipped
I haven't
that.
been able to. There were instances where he was in the beginning in Bombay when he was taken to Bombay for a case. There were many cases against him. So at one point he was flown to Bombay for a case and put into prison and kept in a Mads people cell. And the cell above him, I guess they were open and barred in front, prostitutes from Bombay. And he was in a Mads people cell, and a man actually threw his excrement at him. And the cell was filthy, so it was really horrible, and he was tortured, and he was tortured very badly.
But how did it impact him when he came out? How different was your father when he came out of the jail in 1989? So much he had been through for 5 years.
When Papa went in, what we remember of him when he was young and what all his fellow officers and his friends remember of him was that he was a very jovial and fun-loving human being. When he came out, he was quiet, withdrawn. I think those years in prison took their toll on him, but he was very brave, and even now he never sits and keeps saying, oh, they did this to me, they did that to me, and this was very bad. He's moved on. I think I really admire him for having taken all that in his stride and being able to stay normal and not have gone stark raving crazy.
Your father had always had this idea about an independent Sikh nation. So this is perhaps before he joined the service also, because your family had a very, very strong, had strong roots in the Sikh ethos and culture.
Well, I don't think it was his idea. This idea was first, I think it was brought about first by Hari Krishan Singh Surjit and the Communist Party in maybe as far back as 1940 or 1943, if I'm not mistaken. And then after partition and during partition, it was offered and then not given. And when the Constitution of India was made, I think...
It's because your father, obviously a 1967 batch officer, he obviously took oath to the Indian Constitution.
Yes.
And then, this idea of the Sikh nation, which now he talks, but at the same time there was this impression that, he favors the idea of the movement. being a police officer. Where did these seeds? That's what I'm trying to understand. How did this just happen?
Well, I'd say he's a history student, and maybe he just believes in freedom of speech, and it's his personal view.
Because you also write that Bhindranwale shared an ideology with my father, a separate homeland for the Sikhs. Bhindranwale paid with his life and my father paid for it by spending his prime years behind bars. Papa was the scapegoat the government needed. He became the hunted and finally the trapped. So I just want to understand that how did this all happen?
I've tried to explain it the best that I can in my book. I've given it a slight political backdrop just to make the reader understand where my father was coming from. And I think it's quite clear that yes, he admired Bhindranwale, and yes, he was or is for a separate homeland, and that's his view. And I think in a democratic country it should be allowed, and
but
a view should be allowed.
How honest is the book, in the sense
it's completely honest.
But does it contain everything, or honest in the sense what you have written is honest?
It's absolutely honest from what I felt. It's what I want to say about the book, and yes, I think it's a completely honest account.
I just have this question that if your father hadn't come in contact with Bhindranwale, how your life would have been different?
I don't know. I wouldn't like to sit and mull over that. It's happened. It happened. And maybe it would have been different. Maybe he would have still been convinced of what he believes in, and maybe Sant Bhindranwale wasn't even required for his own thought. 84, the Blue Star happened because he was in the Golden Temple. So yes, I think they are all directly related.
In your book, you've just used the last name Bhindranwale. There's no Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale anywhere, or Sant Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale. Is it a deliberate
no, in the beginning I used Sant Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale, and then just so that when I was making my notes, just so that it's not, it just doesn't go into a long sort of a name and all. In fact, in the letter Papa wrote to me, he cuts it down to even SJB in that personal.
But that's an initial for
yes.
Sant Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale.
Yes, yes.
No, I just thought.
I haven't thought about it that hard and long to.
In the book you have shared this exchange of letters between Mr. Simranjit Singh Mann and the family, in Chandigarh. He appears to be a very, very sensitive man, in the sense these. But when he makes his political statements, he comes across as someone very, very, radical. In fact, we all saw the clash between the SGPC and your father's party workers in the Golden Temple. Is he a different man at home and different man in politics?
Absolutely. I think that's what I've tried to show also a lot in this book, is a different side of him, because I think the world has a very hard impression of him, and that's not true at all. Because
you also write, I often wonder how did this gentle father of mine end up behind bars?
Yes. Yes, because he is a very gentle human being, and he is actually quite the gentleman as well. And what the world thinks of him is because maybe they are just scared of people speaking their mind, and everybody is sort of always diplomatic. He's not. He says what he feels like. He calls a heel, an idea that he doesn't agree with. He'll be the first one to say it, and he's very vocal about it, but he's not essentially the image people have of him. He's very kind.
But he appears to be a very strong hardliner, in the sense, at least in newspapers or the perceived political perception about him?
Well, I feel the media always highlights what they want. He is not. He is not. He is very liberal, and I don't think he's a hardliner.
In fact, in your book, you also mentioned that the media has blacked out your father in terms of, why do you have this impression?
He has been blacked out because people don't agree with him, and that's okay, that's their choice, and I think he's okay with it as well. Maybe that's just a thought. And I say there was a blackout during Operation Blue Star, if I remember correctly. Punjab had a total blackout. No news was...
No, I think at some point you do mention that, you know, that his story has to be told since there is a media blackout virtually.
I don't remember that.
One of the most affected by this would be your mother.
Yes.
How did she handle this? You mentioned that, you know, she was like very courageous, but how did she go about handling this whole thing?
I don't know how she went through with it. She is an incredibly brave woman, also a very private person, and I think it was hardest on her. When Papa went into prison, she was just 34, which would be 6-7 years younger than what I am today. And to be faced with what she was faced with and the way she dealt with it was just amazing. She has stood by my father and the family through thick and thin without ever really breaking down. She never let us feel the pain of the time. We used to just, she made us all strong. And
any particular incident you remember of her courage or?
Well, I've written about it in the book also. It's the one that stays with me because when he was finally arrested from the Nepal border, she was on her way back from Dehradun. My brother was at Welham Boys at that time. And when she got home to Chandigarh, Nanki, my younger sister, was too tiny, so she called me into the drawing room and told me that, you know, your father's been arrested and we don't know where he is right now. All we know is that he's been arrested. And I was very small. I was just 10, 11 at that time. So I said, now what will happen, Mama? And her eyes were red and she had tears in her eyes, but she was just so strong. She says, I don't know, but we are going to carry on. Don't worry. We'll deal with it and we'll manage. And I'll never forget that because I can't imagine anybody else being able to, you know, keep it all together for our sakes. She's remarkable, I think.
In the book, there are a couple of references that you've kind of, you appear to be angry with your father, that, you know, that what he did.
No, I don't think so. And in the book, it's called Stolen Years because we didn't have him around. And my father was my hero and still is. And he went away and I am not angry with him. It's just when you're growing up, you have these you must have gone through it as a teenager. One is always like looking for faults in the parents. And I mean, now this is recent. It happened just a few years ago when he was taking his dog out to the garden, a little puppy, to answer the call of nature. And but you weren't there for all of us when we were growing up. And now, I mean, anyone can take that dog out. He left his meal and went out. So yes, in little ways like this, but otherwise, no, I'm not angry with my father. I admire him greatly.
You mentioned this name, Dilu Buaji.
Yes.
And Mr. Mann also refers to her as, you know, his pillar of strength in the entire 5 years he was in jail.
Yes.
What's been her role? Because there's a lot of mention.
Well, she was my father's sister. She passed away a few years ago. And she was a rock. She was a rock for the family. So was her husband. he still is. They kept us all together, and she literally fought his case for him, and she was always there. So he relied on her totally.
Your father became a member of parliament first time in 1989, and then in 1999. In 1989, I mean, he was, was at his peak when he came out, and he didn't take oath, on the sword issue.
Yes.
And do you think he has this great knack of, being self-destructive? Because everyone at that point said that probably he's going to become the chief minister of the state, and,
I will not comment on that. I don't know. I don't know whether he had a promising conviction in what he says and does.
He had a promising police career.
Yes.
And then he was just there, everything was out for him after those, bad 5 years. And then it appears he destroyed it.
I don't know whether he destroyed it or whether he just does what he believes in. He told me recently, he says, I go to sleep a very happy and content man every night. I regret nothing, and that's the way he is.
Do you discuss politics with him?
To the barest minimum.
But what do you discuss when you discuss?
We discuss world politics and yes, Punjab politics also to a large extent. Yes, we have. He's very open to discussion and everybody's point of view and all, but he sticks to his view no matter what, and you can't change it.
But what is the perception? What do you think is the future of Punjab? Now you're an author, you've kind of had an insight into the history, and you do mention, if in Punjab the drug situation is not taken care of, especially because you saw a lot of it when you were conversing for your father at Khadur Sahib in the recently concluded Lok Sabha elections. So do you discuss the future of Punjab also?
Well, one does discuss it, and at the moment it looks a little bleak. And otherwise, I've written this book. I'm not a political person, and mostly when we are all together, it's family talk. But if Punjab carries on like this, it does look like it has a very bleak future. From what it was to what it is today is quite sad, I think.
In the concluding chapter, you write, today, the Sikhs at least within Punjab do not want Khalistan. Your father on every platform raises this issue. In fact, he recently made a statement that Khalistan should be a buffer state between India, Pakistan and China. What is your position vis-a-vis your father on this?
Well, I wrote that after reading a very interesting article by Sir Mark Tully on his thoughts of what is happening in Punjab today. And yes, I believe that most Sikhs do not want Khalistan, and I think my father also knows that, because he doesn't get voted back into Parliament because of what he believes in, but he has every right to. That's the beauty of being in a democracy. Everybody should be able to believe what they want to and voice what they feel like, as long as they do it in a peaceful manner. That's what he does. That is his belief. It is because of what he went through, because maybe he feels issues have not been resolved and Blue Star has not been, it's just been pushed under the rug, and that's what he believes in. That's the man he is.
My final question, are you planning to write another book now?
Well, no. I think I've written what I had to, and I don't have anything else to write about.
Thank you so much, Pavit Kaur.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you.
ਖਬਰਾਂ ਦੀ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਓ, ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਕਦੇ ਵੀ ਕਿਤੇ ਵੀ ਜੁੜੋ। ਆਪਾਂ ਮਿਲਾਂਗੇ ਫੇਸਬੁੱਕ ਤੇ, ਅਸੀਂ ਦਿਖਾਂਗੇ YouTube ਤੇ, ਸਾਨੂੰ ਫੋਲੋ ਕਰੋ ਟਵਿੱਟਰ ਤੇ। ਖਬਰਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜੇ ਰਹੋ ਦਿਨ ਰਾਤ।